So we are here at the ECOS morning meeting. Today is the Wednesday, the 17th of May, and we have a special guest today, Joe Robertson from the Citizens Climate Lobby will give a presentation about his ideas of reform of participation processes in the UNFCCC process and the Citizens Climate Engagement Network that we are working together on. It's a multi-stakeholder partnership. We are happy to have you here. And Dane is with us, and Lovelin, and looking forward to, and Otto in San Diego through Google Hangout. We're looking forward to inspiring discussions, and video will be available also online. So let me turn over to Joe.
Thank you, Miro. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the Citizens Climate Engagement Network and how it came about, and then also talk about 4 concrete proposals for participation reform. Citizens Climate Engagement Network emerged from the Pathway to Paris project. We had an online process for consultation and where people could get into thematic work streams and make proposals for what should go into the Paris Agreement. People held local meetings, and out of those local meetings, where people with more expertise and people with less expertise came together to discuss their values, their local situations, and their policy preferences, we developed a toolkit that would allow people to convene more and more of these meetings in different kinds of situations with different constraints. And that is what led to the formation of a coalition of support for the Citizens Climate Engagement Network. The underlying idea is that if you have people asking government to do the best it can, you end up with more ambitious policy outcomes and more political will. You end up with fresher ideas circulating and moving into the policy environment, and that empowers leaders to make decisions about the best course going forward. In addition to that, we discovered that while there was a discussion about how you would review and update national climate action strategies, ongoing citizen engagement would provide the opportunity for ongoing review. And so instead of wondering, will there be a review in 5 years or 10 years? And if so, will the review result in an upgrade if the technology has evolved or the country has become more capable or more economically vibrant, et cetera. Instead of that, you simply have people constantly reviewing what's going on, reporting back, updating the world on local and national circumstances, and providing better information about life on the ground. So essentially the way the Citizens Climate Engagement Network works is through that toolkit for local meetings, people are able to convene in whatever space is available to them. It could be a living room, it could be a library, it could be a public square, it could be a major auditorium or a government institution of some kind. Those meetings can be convened by citizens, by stakeholder groups, by community organizations. They could also be convened by government. And the idea is that in any of these different areas, this multi-stakeholder, multi-level partnership process makes everybody appear at the table. So everybody is able to share their ideas. And by creating a global network of exchange for those ideas, the goal is to make sure that if we have, on the one hand, maybe a sitting senator from one country, and on the other hand, a traditional village elder in a fishing community in Indonesia who doesn't have access to technology, doesn't have access to the kinds of solutions that we're all talking about, but actually has the best idea for how to implement some of them. The better idea between those two individuals, regardless of their station in the world, will actually move to other people, and we'll be able to communicate those better ideas faster. So in doing that work, we were able to develop a series of concrete proposals that would allow for reform of the public participation process. Article 6 of the 1992 Convention calls for public participation in the design and implementation of climate policies. In most cases, that's been interpreted as there's a need for good public information. The public should be kept informed. Governments should be transparent. In some of the most democratic countries, the policies are designed inside of government, and there are hearings or consultations, but there's no direct input from citizens in terms of what kind of policy they want in their communities. And so our proposal for reform goes towards that deeper kind of engagement where citizens are active participants in the policy process. This year, we submitted this proposal as something that could be considered by the SBI and by the COP later this year as an official reform for implementation of Article 6 under the Doha Work Program and under Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. The four key components of this proposal are citizen participation in national, regional, and global processes, an ACE platform. ACE is Action for Climate Empowerment, which is Article 6 of the Convention. That platform could be an information exchange. It could be a portal that simply tells good stories about what's going on. It could be an aggregator that links back to all these different kinds of engagement activities. The proposal itself for an ACE platform is neutral, but we, of course, have a couple of different versions of such a thing that we're working with already in this coalition in the ECOS community. And it's important to note that last year, at the end of the fourth ACE dialogue, then Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, Christiana Figueres, said this is something that should be done, and said that while she was there at the Secretariat, she would support the creation of an ACE platform. And just the last 2 days, we've heard a lot of conversation in the fifth ACE dialogue about that very thing. One platform that connects people, or perhaps a number of platforms that are somehow artfully linked and can evolve over time. The third component is universal stakeholder status. What that means is essentially the model of the Aarhus Convention for Environmental Policy in Europe. That standard basically says if you're alive, you are an environmental stakeholder. The environment permeates everything. You don't have to justify the idea that you might have something to say about the environment or it might affect your destiny. The reason that is not normally the standard is that decision-making bodies find it complicated to interact with too many people. But when you make environmental policy, or when you make blanket policies that affect every living soul within a jurisdiction, or even beyond your jurisdiction, not consulting with those people creates a lot of inefficiencies. Policies are designed without necessarily taking into account life on the ground or people's day-to-day priorities, and that can complicate implementation. So universal stakeholder status is critical, we believe, to implementation of the Paris Agreement and ultimately the mandate of the '92 Convention to stop dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Fortunately, the Aarhus Convention has shown precisely what we are also saying, which is that wider stakeholder engagement gets better results. In fact, policy design moves faster, you get to consensus more quickly, political support is deeper and more resilient. And so we propose that should be a standard in the UNFCCC process. How exactly that is manifested is yet to be determined, but we think that citizen participation as a standard and an ACE platform for ongoing engagement help to make that possible. And the fourth component is the principle of mutual education. So where governments are thinking about climate education, or where funds are flowing across the world to educate people, train people, and do capacity building, we also feel that from our experience doing citizen engagement within Citizens Climate Lobby specifically, and in the Citizens Climate Engagement Network, mutual education, both government to citizens and also citizens to government, is critical. Without that specific definition of education in relation to climate policy, the concern is that governments will project information into the world, but will not gather enough of it in order to inform their policies. National governments in particular have jurisdiction over certain levels of policy, certain levels of funding, certain actions, but not over others. And if they're not looking at those other areas of action taken by subnational governments, private businesses, communities, and individuals, then they simply don't fully understand their own capabilities as a nation. And so the principle of mutual education is critical, both for citizen participation and also for these other non-party stakeholders. And I think I'll just sort of leave it there. Those are the bones of the proposal, but maybe we could have a conversation about what some of that means.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. Perhaps you say also something about the partners of the initiative, because you have aligned already quite a number of strong institutions behind this.
Sure. I'm going to just bring up the advisory coalition here. When we created the Citizens Climate Engagement Network, there was a sort of foundational meeting in Minneapolis, Minnesota in October of 2015 before the COP21, called Minneapolis 2015. And we put forward a governance strategy. And the idea was there would essentially be three elements of governance. One would be the global team structure of local leaders and convenings and people feeding information into that network. The second would be policy work streams, where people actually get into specific aspects of the global policy environment. And then the third would be an advisory coalition that supports implementation and would host a secretariat as well. And so the advisory coalition is comprised of groups like, for instance, IAAI, the Global Challenges Action Network, Citizens Climate Lobby, Worldwide Views, Action Vitale from Cameroon, the University of Salento, represented by Professor Susana Cáfaro, the Youngo Network, Climates, ICAD, UNICEF, the Earthchild Institute, the World Bank Group Civil Society Team, the Climate Reality Project. I don't know if I said that before. And so each of these different coalition members is in some way responsible for some kind of either very innovative or very high level or very far-reaching public engagement. In the case of UNICEF, for instance, you have 15,000 team members who are actually working in communities around the world, reaching hundreds of millions of children. In the case of the UN Environment Program, you have an overall secretariat structure working to build environmental policy everywhere in the world to protect human health, et cetera. And of course, the Climate Action Network, which not only coordinates among NGOs, but also involves many NGOs that specifically work in communities and help to ensure participation to get the best outcomes for people where they live and breathe.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's really a great multi-level governance innovation and participation innovation. And as regards ECOS and also my organization, IAI, especially also this ACE platform idea is very interesting, because we would be interested to develop also a data partnership with the UNFCCC regarding activities of the education, communication, and outreach stakeholders, and especially also youth, to be documented on the NASCA platform, the non-state actors zone for climate action. And there's a lot of synergy potentials between your ideas and your networks and this data management ideas that we have, and which will be presented further also today at our blockchain for Paris Agreement implementation side event. Everybody welcome at 6:30 in the Kaminzimmer. And with this, I give the floor to our audience, Otto, whoever would be interested to learn more about or to ask any questions or comment.
Me.
Yeah.
I was just thinking.
Yeah. Perhaps the language issues.
As I mentioned before, we as CLIC, we are very interested to engage with you, because to be linked with you because we have our own project right now. Obviously, we'll be linked with the climate change negotiations. That's of my part and of our colleague because we have the expertise of it. But the Ecuador team developed the laboratories, well, I will say it in Spanish, sorry, because today I'm in a kind of another mood. It's Laboratorios Itinerantes de Urbanismo Táctico. And they will be doing a great job for the next, I think, the next month in Ecuador, but we would like to implementing the same project, obviously with the climate change issues in Mexico first, and probably in Colombia, because they are working with the Copy in My City, by the way. So the point of here is to develop an app to get all the data together. And in Mexico, we have a lot of access to these laboratories of data issues. So it will be great to develop with you something special because it's focused on youth and the work with youth, but obviously with the civil society in general. So I don't know, maybe we can get in touch, and obviously we can support the NASCA project too, because it's to upload obviously the data there with the very concrete processes or projects on it. So it's good because most of the time, even the government or the public sector, even the private sector, we don't have enough data from them, and they don't have enough data from us too, because obviously they are developing the public policy without some special consultations in some groups of the society. So, and most of the time, for example, in the case of Global South or in Latin America, it will be easy for us to make public consultations online from civil society to get more data, obviously, because we cannot be working in the entire world, entire region, and obviously we don't have all the data, but maybe statistically we can have enough data to NASCA, for example. And it would be great about climate change because we have data about water, we have data about the air, we have data about even the weather and of the poverty, hunger, etc. But what about climate change? We don't have data about it. So we are working on that. So it will be great to start to work on it. And well, the first example is Latin America.
Perfect. Let's go for Latin America. Joe, do you have any activities also for the Spanish-speaking part of the world?
Sure. So let's see. The first thing I can say is that we have Citizens Climate Lobby across Latin America. We have a few local groups that are getting started and building a network in the Americas. And lo bueno es que también hacemos esa interacción en español. Y estamos entrenando a gente joven de participar en la legislatura y todo eso. We're also adapting the toolkit for local meetings to this environment, and we're looking for opportunities very specifically to reach communities that don't normally have much of a say in the policy process. One of the things that's not necessarily unique to Latin America, but it is common across Latin America, is that you have communities that are culturally different from the mainstream political environment and are generally excluded from the political process. There was even a moment a few years ago where one head of state very unfortunately distinguished between first and second class members of his own country. And so we want to make sure that's not the way things go, and that people are able to participate actively wherever they are, whatever their sort of political environment offers to them. We want to be able to offer them a way to have a voice and change that dynamic. So we're consciously thinking about how to do that and want to deploy the toolkit to do that. I wanted to respond to something that Danae said about, the different kinds of information that are moving through these itinerant laboratories or through different policy design processes or data gathering efforts, online portals. What we found is that it's important to have both the very clean, streamlined reporting process that you see in the UNFCCC newsroom or the NASCA portal, and also the much more complex, kind of messy person-to-person engagement that can operate across many different platforms and basically reach people wherever they are or let them in from wherever they are. And so those layers and that multifaceted process is, I think, very, very important for us getting to a place where people really do have a way to take advantage of universal stakeholder status. Whether it's recognized or not, I think we can start doing that work, but we can't just have kind of one platform to rule them all. We have to find a way for those different types of information to interact and be shared and be kind of mobilized to support each other and to provide clarity where it's most useful. I wanted to just add a piece of this puzzle, which is conversations over the last few days and some of the events we've been working on have revealed that for a lot of people, information isn't going to work like information. It's going to work like play or entertainment or something like that. And I wanted to give Lachlan a chance to talk about his work to try to gamify the climate change.
Thank you. And well, I wanted to start, first of all, one of the things I think that's unique in the Citizen Climate Engagement Network is that even though there's a framework for participation, one is that piece of that if you're on the planet, if you're breathing, you're a stakeholder, and that the engagement network doesn't limit anyone who wants to participate to a particular kind of engagement. In some instances or organizations, and it doesn't, not to belittle anything, or you can participate as long as you do it like this. You can participate as long as you, and this is really such a broad umbrella that really is consistent with what 2020 or Bust is about, which is that we want to offer the ordinary person anywhere in the world, regardless of their status or where they are in the world or economics or anything like that, the opportunity to participate in taking action that will actually bring about the end of the climate crisis. And many of these people are not going to join an organization. They're not going to work with their government. That's just not kind of how they see themselves. And in fact, a lot of them are glad that those people are out there because they think they're the ones that are going to fix everything, right? And so our notion was, well, how do you actually get to those people where they live rather than trying to bring them to where we are? Let's go to them. And so we want to get the Pokemon crowd. We want to get the reality TV show crowd. We want to get the fashion industry crowd. We want to get, the baseball, whatever it is, right? And so we've, developed a campaign with an app called 2020 or Bust. You can play the game of the century. And it's your opportunity to engage in ending the crisis with a game. So, for example, you pick the things that you want to, actions that you want to take, and then you get points for that. So, for example, I'm not going to eat meat today. Okay, good. You got 10 points. And then you amass those points and you get to certain levels, and then you can, compete with other people and who's going to win and to have, to kind of take the climate situation from this kind of huge, amorphous, overwhelming thing to something that's simple and actionable. It's a game that you can play and it's a game that you can win.
I will put it on the screen, so that's also on the Hangout and also recorded.
That's okay.
Yeah, that was my. Now we have it, and now
There
I
you
will.
go. There you go.
Wait a minute, I have to
So
put it,
that's-
share it also on
That's
the
great.
webcast.
That's great. So anyway,
no, so sorry.
it's just been, in the work that we've gotten to do with Joe and the Citizens Climate Engagement Network, it's been just a real, just the kind of collaboration that we like. It's not, are you going to do it this way, or are you going to do it that way, our way or your way, but that somehow in the synergy together, everything gets bigger.
Mm-hmm. So now it's on the
Yeah.
webcast. Would you like to say something about the homepage?
Well, we like it.
It's good for you.
No, I mean, if you just go to 2020orbust.org, there's the homepage. We've got a world tour that we're doing where we go to different cities and universities and give presentations and kind of turn people on to what this is. And there's a place where you can download the app, also a place you can donate. There's some of our partners, Give Me Five and the Compassion Games. And so, we welcome people's participation. So we've gotten a comment that we should take the skydivers off there. So that's going to be coming off, always getting good input. Yeah, and if it's a very, very collaborative deal because again, this is the planet's project. It's not ours. It's everybody's. Anybody that wants to get involved, and there's our advisory board and Olaf, who was also mentioned on Joe's board as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Very good.
I would like to ask something behind the screen here.
Yes.
Okay, hi, this is Otto. Once again, hi everybody. I actually missed one part of the call since my computer died, but now I'm back on my mobile phone. Anyway, so the thing is, what I wanted to contribute to was the part where you talked about the collaboration between other organizations. And what I see over here, that is very necessary, especially when it comes to local organizations in the areas where the consumer-based technology is not a standard, So what needs to be done, from my perspective, is be open and out to these companies, not companies, sorry, wow, that's my day job. Anyway, so reach out to these individuals and organizations that actually operate on a local level and kind of get these people involved also, regards to information through our network and kind of through these kind of branches.
Okay.
Yeah, bring it further down to level in the local communities and so on.
Okay. Very good. Could you prepare something about these ideas in writing and share it then in the ECOS Facebook group? We could then also, in a few weeks or so, make a hangout on these topics to hear also views of other members, or perhaps Joe would like to add something.
Well, so I just, what I heard in that intervention, Otto, is that, you can actually network together different branches of a wider landscape of engagement. So there are different organizations operating at different levels and going down to the community level. And that networking of groups and networking of levels is really important. And use the word branches, I think, and it made me think of some of the volunteers that we're working with in Nepal have a strategy that they call the tree strategy, where their thinking is you build a kind of national team, and then you have leadership teams in the different administrative districts around the country, which might be states or provinces or municipalities and other places. And then under those administrative district leaders, you'd have multiple local groups that are all engaging at the community level. And I think that's one strategy that some people are using, but it's also a model that can be replicated by others, so that what might appear to be an overwhelming challenge to organize a society or to connect many different networks becomes simpler because there's a core structure.
Good.
I agree with you, sir. And I think the challenge kind of that brings to it is actually a matter of information. Wow.
Oh, now we cannot hear you well. Perhaps you go closer to the mic. There was some recording.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, I'm sorry, first of all. Yeah, the mobile phone is pretty bad. However, the thing is, what I just wanted to say is you're absolutely right. So, I mean, at this stage, it may not be necessary to get the local parties involved, but I think in future terms and in our future endeavors also, it might be better for us to get these parties involved as well in order to kind of boost our outreach as well.
Everybody needs to be on board, yes.
Yeah, and I guess maybe my own kind of way of summarizing this might draw from the ACE dialogue this week. A teacher who's won awards here in Germany for doing sustainable development education through play and through hands-on learning with kids, thinking about the kinds of things they need to be able to learn how things work in the world. one of the things that she said was part of the learning that they're doing is that they can take responsibility for decisions that they might have otherwise been told are not theirs. That in terms of stewardship, in terms of being good to each other, being good to the world, you can simply take over that responsibility. It doesn't have to be something that's done from high up the ladder or that's centrally controlled. And I think she actually used the words ecological citizenship, and that we're coming into an age when we all need to learn to be ecological citizens. We're not just responsible for our day-to-day lives or for, you know, one vote every few years in our democratic systems, but we actually can take responsibility for the stewardship of systems that we all depend on.
Perfect.
I would actually have in regards to that matter.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you want to add something, Otto?
Yeah, please. Thank you. All right. So the thing is, what I just wanted to add over there is I would like to know to which extent we want to participate or partake or even practice, I say, policy making in the global level, since we have like big communities and big networks working together, and we have like the data platform already set up. I'm wondering whether there will be an opportunity for, well, what we call crowdsourcing over here. We actually did a project with the Ministry of Justice of Finland where we kind of engaged the participants to make it together to be like the framework for laws. And I think that might be something of interest for the people, that their voices actually become heard in the global level through our advocacy. Should we take that path as well?
Would you like to?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm still able to share my screen at the moment, but I wanted to share the access to good tool that we're building using Read and Note. I had to switch to a different screen, but I don't know if I have that option here for some reason. Oh, I do. I see. So just one moment. Oh, sorry, I'm going to switch to a different part of my.
Oh, there it is.
So,
yeah.
So the access to good community, this is something that's still in development. You're seeing it in a very raw form, but we're beginning to test how this can apply to the type of crowdsourced policymaking you're talking about. We don't use that term exactly for what this is because we're thinking of it more like a participatory design community where, for instance, I'll just bring up the document that's actually our proposal for stakeholder participation reform and show you an example. In this particular technology, what you can do is put documents like this one, or the Paris Agreement, for instance, or the Sustainable Development Goals Agreement, or local policy initiatives at the city level into this system. Readers can highlight material, they can make a comment on it, and after doing that, you actually can create a discussion out of those annotations. The annotations can include video, they can include images, infographics. You can link out to other resources. You can take a paper document, put it into this format, and enrich it tremendously. And that enrichment can be participatory and it can be global. So what would be a local policy discussion can turn into a global policy discussion for the benefit of those who want the best policy locally. They can learn best practices from others. And then you see here, you end up with what is essentially a timeline of discussions about many different topics. In this case, you have our participation reform discussion. Here you have a discussion about the Paris Agreement being the smartest way to a livable future, not an economic burden or challenge, but an opportunity. News about what India is doing to clean up air pollution. And each of those topics can actually become a discussion community of its own. And that's part of why I said before that I think it's important to have both the unwieldy, messy complexity and to welcome that, and then at the same time to clarify and provide very useful insights that can then be shared globally.
Perfect.
Very good.
Okay, with this, I think we are fine for today. thanks for everybody who was with us. I think there will be a lot of cooperation and synergy in the future between your Citizens Climate Lobby initiatives and ECOS community and our NASCA portal data partnership ambitions with Dane and others, how we can bring the activities of the education, communication, and outreach stakeholders and youth to this global information system about climate action.
I think so.
Perfect.
Thank you, Miro.